Well, good morning. It's time to ring down the curtain on another year. What happened in Upper Michigan in 2018? That's just what we're going to talk about today, and it starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
And I'm very pleased to be able to welcome back two people who are always on top of what's happening in the Upper Peninsula. Today, we're not going to look back necessarily at all of the top stories of the year, but the key stories in the areas of politics and the economy. Joining me to talk about those stories are Amy Klickner, the CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership, and Mike Prusi, who represented this area in Lansing, first as a state representative, then in the state Senate. Amy and Mike, welcome back to the Ryan Report.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
I guess we didn't blow it last year, so we get to be back again, which is great.
I look forward to it. Are you guys happy to see 2018 come to a close?
Well, I just think it's been an exciting year with a lot of good things happening. So yes and no, but I think it's a trajectory into 2019 and some positive things that we're going to be able to expect in 2019 as well.
Okay, how about you, Mike?
When you get to be our age, Don, you just want time to slow down a little bit and the calendar pages to quit flipping quite so fast.
They do go very fast.
Yes, they do.
Amy, the Lake Superior Community Partnership is just wound up its 20th anniversary year. The organization continues to be strong and active. It's a good year and everything going well?
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about the calendar moving fast, to think that it's been 20 years and you as a founding member of the organization, to believe that we've been around for 20 years and still doing some great work has been very exciting, but hard to believe that I've been there for 20 years. And now we look at how we're doing some better things in collaboration and regionalization, and those are so important in economic development, and I think we've really taken a step in the right direction there.
Okay. And Mike, I know you're retired, but I know you're still somewhat active in politics as a Democrat. Was this a good year for you?
On the whole, it was a great year. I was a little disappointed to see some of the results in the Upper Peninsula where, we lost a House seat and didn't regain my old Senate seat, which we had high hopes for. But on the whole, I think Democrats should be smiling as the year changes.
And we'll talk about some of those specifically as we go along. But actually, this year the Democrats did sweep all of the statewide offices, including the U.S. Senate seat, Debbie Stabenow going back, governor and attorney general and all the rest. So that was a very positive sign for your party.
It was. I think our candidates were strong. We had 4 strong women at the top of the ticket, and I think they're articulate. They understood the issues that faced the people of Michigan, and they were able to communicate their message quite well, and I think the voters understood that it was time to make a change at those levels.
And Amy, I know you've been part of the new governor's economic development transition team.
Yes, it's been very exciting to be a part and to have the Upper Peninsula have a voice, and I have Mike to thank for that as well, for getting me involved. But as these administrations change, they want to take a look at we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. What's working in each of these departments? What needs improvement? What new suggestions and innovative ideas do those with the boots on the ground have? And the transition advisory committees are a great place to be able to share that information.
And that raises the question, will there be major changes with the MEDC, for example, different people, different projects, programs?
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, so you have a new governor coming in, so you have probably every department head will be new or close to everyone. So then it depends on how that leadership looks at it. But I would say overall, from the conversations we've been having, most economic developers across the state feel like the MEDC is extremely important to those of us on the ground. We do see some areas of improvement, so I think they will take that to heart. And then again, they're doing that on the workforce side and other areas as well. So I do think we'll see some changes.
And Mike, you were in effect the end of the line for the present time anyway. Democrats held that 38th Senate seat for almost forever, in modern times. And you had to leave because of term limits, of course. Tom Casperson took that seat, served 8 years, and now Ed McBroom will be the new state senator. I assume you were pulling for someone different.
Well, Scott Dianda and I go back quite a ways. When Scott was president of the statewide AFSCME local for state employees, he was in Lansing quite a bit before he was elected to the State House. And then when he was in the State House, I thought he was doing a pretty good job as a state representative, and I thought he would make a great state senator, and I still believe that. Unfortunately, not enough voters in the 38th district agreed with that. So Ed McBroom's a solid guy, and I think we'll be able to work with that.
And Amy, you obviously had a good, not just you, but I think most of the economic developers, a good relationship with Senator Casperson, and hope that will continue.
Yes, exactly. And I think with Senator Casperson, I feel like we're not just losing one senator, we're losing two with Marty, because his chief of staff has been so instrumental in a lot of projects in the Upper Peninsula. But the tough thing with the Dianda and McBroom race is one of them had to lose, and they're both good people, and they've been good to the Upper Peninsula. And so that was a really tough one for me, because we have a good relationship with both of them, and unfortunately one had to lose.
And it's kind of a political wonk. I do recall, you know, the history, and it does seem so unusual that typically the Democrats were made up most of the UP legislative delegation. And now there's only one Democrat, Representative Sarah Kembenzi.
Mm-hmm. And that's not the first time. Steve Lindbergh was the sole Democrat north of the bridge for one of his terms as well in the House. So the UP has been changing over the years. When I went to the legislature in 1995, we had 4 Democratic state reps and 1 senator. Walt North was the only Republican that represented any of the areas north of the bridge, and he and I overlapped in Alger County. So it's slowly been whittling away, and the pendulum is liable to swing back again in a few election cycles. It's I think that's the nature of politics in America today, and in Michigan as well, is that pendulum is going to keep swinging. And I think there's the divisive nature of our political discourse these days is going to shove that pendulum further one way, and then it's going to swing rapidly back the other way.
I want to follow up on that point in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report after we pause 2 minutes for this break. Our guests this morning are Amy Klickner and Mike Prusi, talking about what happened in 2018. At least one more political question. You know, with the new Democratic governor and the House and Senate both under control of the Republican Party, are we likely to see, again, government like we have in Washington, where people can't work together?
I certainly hope not. You know, this lame duck session that they're going through, and they're trying to strip powers from all 3 of the constitutional offices, the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General, and they're labeling it as good government reform. They've had those offices in control of the legislature for 8 years. Why is it so good after the election, when they have like 5 weeks to work on things, when they had 8 years to make these government reforms and restrict the powers of the constitutional officers? I think that's an affront to the people that voted for these candidates and voted in the anticipation that our system was going to operate as it has been operating, at least as far as the ability for our elected officials to do their jobs. And I think these bills that are going through lame duck now are a real sham.
What about Governor Whitmer? What will she be like, and what will she bring to the governor's office? And you worked with her for a long time.
I did. I served for 6 years with Gretchen Whitmer in the Senate, and while she was in the House, we were both the ranking members on our respective appropriations committees. And she is bright, she's forceful when she has a point to make, but she builds bridges as well. I think the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, where she worked with Republicans in the Senate and the House, as well as a Republican governor, to expand the insurance coverage for 600,000 or 700,000 people in Michigan, demonstrates that she has the ability and the desire to work to get a common goal accomplished. And I'm hopeful that as she starts her administration next month, with her experience in the legislature, she'll be able to go to the leadership in both chambers, the Republican majorities, and work out compromises and methods to deal with the issues that confront Michigan's residents, because it does no one any good to have the gridlock that's being displayed in Washington, D.C. these days.
And one thing for certain, the way the terms work, she will have a Republican Senate for this whole term.
Correct.
Let's talk about the economy. Some things going on. I know, Amy, you've been very involved with the Cleveland Cliffs, talking about reopening the Empire Mine. Anything new on that?
You know, not really anything new, but it's not off the table. So, you know, we had hoped to get an answer sometime in the fall, and I think that decision is being pushed off a little. But what we're hearing is, you know, positive things. You know, they're still taking a look at it from a business development standpoint. We stay in touch with the team here locally and at the Cleveland level, and I think it's still out there as very promising.
And Mike, those are your old stomping grounds, and any thoughts you have as to the
I certainly hope, and I've had some discussions with the folks in Cleveland who called me after the election and asked if I was going to be able to have some discussions with the governor, and I assured them that I would explain to Governor Whitmer and her administrative team, especially in the MEDC, the critical nature of potential reopening of the Empire Mine to the economy of the whole Central Upper Peninsula. And I intend to have that discussion when I get the opportunity. She's been rather busy. I've had about 3 minutes of phone time with my old friend since the election, but she sounded so positive and so confident and so glad to have the election behind her and the work ahead of her. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get some answers from Lansing that will make the folks in Cleveland a little more comfortable with coming toward this way.
What about the Eagle Mine and the possibility of Eagle East extending the life of that mine? Is that looking positive?
Yep, you know, that's definitely positive. And then, of course, in the UP, we have the Back 40 and also the Highland Copper. So we have a lot of mining interests up here right now. And just to piggyback on Governor-elect's stand on working with rural communities as well, I think she raises that as something very important. In northern Michigan, of course, you know, even knuckles up into the UP. She's been up here many, many times. She's taken time to spend with us when we're in Lansing. I think she knows that there's not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer in economic development in particular. And so I think she's going to have a team in place that can take a look at that. Now, having said that, we also do have, with Lee Chatfield coming in as Speaker of the House and Tristan Cole, some leadership from our Northern Michigan delegation as well that I think can help rural economic development.
Okay, we'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take one more break. We're looking back at 2018 with Amy Klickner and Mike Prusi. Let's talk about healthcare. A couple of big developments there. Number one, what's happening over in Dickinson County with their healthcare facility, and of course the new hospital being built in Marquette. And Mike, I think you served on the hospital board for a while.
I served on the Bell Hospital board for a couple of years back before I went into the Senate. And you know, the Bell facility they were just starting to talk about building the new one. And after I was elected to the Senate, I got to go to the groundbreaking and then subsequently the ribbon cutting. And I was very happy to see the new facility go up. The whole transition has been less than smooth and perfect, but you know, it's still there and it's still providing great health care. That's where I go for my work.
And Amy, you know, in our communities where there are hospitals, typically they're the largest or one of the largest employers. So their
Absolutely.
future is important not only in providing health care but to the economy.
Right. I mean, they're a huge employer. They're an economic driver. There's also the healthcare sector is not going away. It's growing. And even in particular with the baby boomers aging and needing more medical care, you know, it's just going to continue to grow. So to have what we have in our community is amazing. In economic development, that's a huge asset that you sell for a potential business attraction project. And we have the new hospital opening in April. of next year. But now recent, developments with reuse of the old hospital, which was a big question because you don't want to have something let go and blighted, moving forward. So we have a lot of positives, again, to look forward to in 2019.
Yes, and that's a very positive development, having a local developer who will take over the whole parcel and make something.
A proven developer, proven with large projects, so that's amazing.
Speaking of Dickinson County, I know that they formed a new organization this year, and the Lake Superior Partnership was part of that. What tell us about that?
Well, the Dickinson area EDA had really been struggling as to where they were going to go next. They had an executive director who had retired, and so we came in and started working with them collaboratively, helped them reestablish their public-private partnership. They hired Lois Ellis, who, as you know, used to work for the Lake Superior Community Partnership, and then they contracted with us to do a lot of the back office support and also a lot of the economic development support for Lois, and they're going gangbusters down there. They do have a big issue on their hands with their hospital, but I believe that they have the right people in place right now, one being Dennis Smith as a CEO or a senior restructuring officer over there, and the community that understands the importance of a healthcare facility. I
think one of the important things, and I know you were both involved in this, but is the fact that we're on our way to becoming sufficient in electric power for the area. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the development of these two new facilities in the Upper Peninsula, basically to replace Presque Isle's load. I think having that newer, cleaner, more efficient power generating stations is going to another tool to sell to economic developers is the availability of power. Now, we don't know what that power is going to cost. Obviously, the users of the facility, the customers, end up paying for the development of this. But if it's spread out over a long period of time, I think it can be quite a positive, and both for the environmental needs of cleaner generating facilities as well as the availability of the power.
And I think the beauty of those is they described them to me as almost like Legos, so that when you're looking to expand, it's not a major, it still costs, there's a good CapEx to it, but it's not like having to build a second power plant. You can build on modules as the community grows and the need for energy grows, and I think that's just a smart way to do it with kind of the up and down cycles we see, but that prepares us to be able to continue to grow.
Unfortunately, we didn't have near enough time for this discussion. We could have talked about things like the devastating floods in Houghton, which I think the government has had a fairly strong response to. What's happening in the Marinesco area with the closing of a prison, just so many other issues and political issues as well. But thanks for coming in and talking about the ones we did.
Well, thanks for having us.
It was great to be here.
And I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Well, as we look back at 2018, we remember that we said goodbye to some people and places this year. At Michigan Tech, Glenn Mraz decided it was time to step down as the university's president. Glenn came to Tech as a student, later joined the faculty, and ultimately became the school's president. In all, he spent almost 40 years there, the last 14 as president. Very few people anywhere have achieved the distinction of starting as a student and finishing up as the school's president. The good times came to an end for Mike McCarthy and the Green Bay Packers. McCarthy's record included 9 playoff appearances, including 4 NFC championship games and 1 winning Super Bowl. McCarthy did well enough they named a street after him in Green Bay, actually Ashwaubenon. But it's the old story. What have you done for me lately? It just won't be the same driving on McCarthy Way anymore. We said goodbye to Yonkers in 2018. One of the anchor stores in the Westwood Mall arrived about 40 years ago as Prangies. Now it's a big open spot in the front of the mall. Wells Fargo decided to leave us in 2018. While some of their operations remain, all of the bank locations now are operating under the Flagstar name. I guess we won't be seeing the Wells Fargo stagecoach around the UP anymore. You know, this year we also said goodbye to some special individuals who had a unique impact. One was Carl Pellenpah, who made his mark as the host of one of the longest-running shows in the history of television. Carl was a television pioneer, arriving here at TV6 when our business was just finding its way and helping to blaze the trail for those who would follow. 2018 also marked the passing of Goofus. Born Alan Amos Mackey, he was known to all as Goofus, and his fame spread throughout the Upper Peninsula because of his cheerful nature and love for entertaining people with his one-man band featuring his Pocatello. This year also saw the passing of Tim Kabasic. He was an outdoor enthusiast involved in many sportsmen's organizations and will be remembered as the longtime host of the Trails and Tales radio show. Tim was a retired EMS paramedic and was very involved in community emergency planning. A Marquette icon also left us this year. Phil Nemistow was born during the Depression and grew up in the Marquette orphanage. In his 50s, he found his calling when he created his own job, washing windows and shoveling snow for merchants downtown. He was loved by all he encountered in his daily walk through town with his bucket and squeegee in hand, a trek that continued until he was 88 years old. And I also want to mention someone who left us in 2017 as it was drawing to a close. Tom Baldini did so much to serve Marquette and the Upper Peninsula, it's difficult to list his contributions in a few words. Let me just say, he has been missed in so many ways. There were many others who passed away in 2018, and like those I've mentioned, they will all be missed by their families, their co-workers, and their friends. Each of us make contributions to life in our own individual way. For me, I guess it's hard to believe that we're ringing down the curtain on 2018. It seems like only yesterday we were creating the arrival of a new century and all worried about Y2K. They say as we get older, time goes faster. I can attest to the fact that's true. Lately, it seems to be moving at the speed of a bullet train. I'll be back in a minute. Well, it's time to say goodbye for the final time this year. And this is also the final time to remind you that you can also find this show at uppermichigansource.com. Today's show will be available starting tomorrow afternoon. Thanks to Amy Klickner and Mike Prusy for being with us this morning as we reviewed some of the interesting developments of 2018. And thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday as we start the new year.